Morning and welcome to Avero Live this week. Today we're going to take questions. We're taking questions from prospects, from clients. Lots of questions have come in over email and through our social channels. And we're just going to go through them and answer them to the best of my ability and any audience questions that come in. So if you're joining us today, please type in the chat box and tell us where you're joining from, a little bit about you if you want to tell us, and we'll go from there. And also, we go live as a Vero every Wednesday at 10 a.m. This podcast, this live stream then turns into a podcast, our newsletters, our blog posts, and lots of other great things that we offer to our clients and prospects across the world. A little bit about Vero. We are an tech agnostic, independent technology and management consulting firm that focuses on public sector in the US. And we specialize in planning for IT strategy and also large scale ERP implementations, ranging from financial systems, HR systems, and everything that surrounds core processes within a local government organization. So we've done work with cities, states, counties, transit agencies, public housing, you name it. Anything to do with the government, we actively pursue and work with. And we're really proud of the work we're doing across the country. So without further ado, I am going to start looking at the questions coming in. And I'm going to take the first one, which was asked by a prospective client. This actually was asked of us during a sales presentation we had recently. And the question is, it's a long question, but I'm going to summarize it. It talks about budgetary constraints in local governments and how they're always asked to do more with less. Everyone expects governments to do more with less, understandably. They also say that technology can be the key lever for creating public value. It can help control costs through automation, provide consistency in service through process management, improve citizen interface, and through data analysis, better citizen, uh, better identifying citizen demands as well as extent to which those needs are being satisfied. Performance measurement. However, citizens may place comparatively lower value on technology investments when weighed against more visible assets like parks or facilities. How have you helped other clients, and how might you help the county make a business case for an investment like this? This meaning an ERP modernization effort, so that we can communicate its benefits to the public. How do you ensure that the recommended solutions are right sized and within our organizational capacity? What a great question. This is this is a very intelligent question, right? You're talking about public perception of what the government's spending money on. If you're spending money on a fancy new football field, you're going to be in the newspapers. It's going to be highly visible. It's going to be talked about. It's going to be voted on. And a lot of this is because people understand what that is, because they can see it. It's a football field. If you're building a new courthouse, visible. If you're building a new city hall, visible. But technology is it's something that lives within your walls. It's invisible almost. Only the people that are using it on a daily basis know that it's changing. So how do you make the case uh, for getting the votes, for getting the support to do a multi-million dollar ERP implementation? And the way I've seen this happen is just through grassroots advocacy. The best story I can tell on that is our one of our first clients. They have a 21 member legislative body. It's a rural county, and well, semi-rural, and 21 member legislative body that was was at the time when we worked with them, they were up in arms against the executive body, which is the mayor's office. They did not want anything to do with anything related to spending any money. It was all about voting everything down. So how did we make the case for a $5 million almost technology modernization plan that went beyond just ERP implementation? It was slow. The first thing we did was make, we just got the scope was doing an IT strategic plan. Step one, take stock of where we are today. That situation was bad. They didn't have any virtualization. None of their servers were optimized or even upgraded. They had a homegrown green screen ERP system that was hand built by their IT director of 30 plus years, who had, by the way, left the organization. And the situation was really dire. So our first task was to identify what the real problems were. And we didn't go at it from just, you need to replace servers and buy new computers, which is what most people expect when you talk about IT strategic planning, and technology modernization. But we were able to make the case for a growing county tied to economic development, make sure that the investments that they were looking at, and they were also doing investments in hard assets like roads and schools and the football fields. And I've always talked about how it's the same risk profile, right? It's not the same visibility, but it's the same risk profile. So when people that are voting on these items that they don't understand what an ERP modernization really means, are you just buying computers? Why would they cost $2 million per year? You have to take on an educator's role almost to explain what this means. One, not just in technical terms, but also how is this going to impact everyone around you? How is this going to impact your county or city from an economic development standpoint, from a talent acquisition and management standpoints? You're bringing in people, especially in a growing county where there's a lot of economic development growth happening. You're trying to attract companies like, I'm making names up, Amazon and Google, to come set up shop in your locality, and they expect to do business online. They expect to do business through your web portals, through your county or city website. And that's a key element of your offerings to these companies that want to come build in your locality. So that's one angle, right? Again, the question was, how do you convince the public? Public's not necessarily easy, but easier, because if you offer them services they can avail of um, virtually online, that they don't have to stand in line at the county courthouse or the city building or what have you, they'll be happy. At least consumers and citizens of a certain generation. But you need to give them the option, and that's another way of tying all of this together to the public perception. How do you win that over when you're spending $3 to $4 million on technology that you can't see and touch? You sell the outcomes. You sell what it's going to bring to the citizens of your county or city at the very end. Not to mention, internally, you're looking at efficiencies. You're looking at attracting better talent, retaining talent, becoming more efficient, so that your accountants, your utility workers are not bogged down by Excel sheets. They're not bogged down by paperwork. They're doing strategic thinking. They're doing management. They're making sure that your organization is moving forward according to the vision that was set by council, by commission, by the city management. Um, and and you tie all of this together in a cohesive story, because otherwise you're not going to sell it. You're not going to sell something that you can't see. So how do you ensure the recommended solutions are right size within an organizational capacity? That's another part of that question. That's a whole different area of uh, technology modernization and implementations. Everyone talks about AI. No one knows what it really means for the end user, which is our governments. um, it's like we've just discovered oil, and now we're trying to figure out, should we build roads, should we build cars, should we eat this, what happens? So that's the kind of era we're in with AI, and what's going to happen to that. So my point in that is, you can talk about being on the bleeding edge of technology and buy all the things that are shiny and new, and just because you have the funding. But if you don't have the right kind of infrastructure, not just IT, but also business processes, people that are willing to take risks and learn new things, a supportive legislature, you're not going to get much out of it. So, how do you right size this? It always comes from going at it from a business process and strategy perspective. What is your vision for delivering services to your citizenry in the next 3 to 5 years? Let's start there. And then we'll look at what you have today. You might have a green screen AS400. Clearly, that's not visionary. Those things are workhorses, but they don't necessarily attract the best talent or make things the most efficient. Next, you do a gap analysis of where you are based on your vision, where you are today. These are the gaps that will prevent you from getting to your vision. And how do you fill those gaps? That's where you come in with an IT strategy. That's when you come in with an IT strategic plan that tells you how to right size these things. All right, audience questions. Megan asks, how would you guide an employee who lacks the knowledge of current technology and practices to see the value in changing and actively supporting it? No buzzwords. How would you guide an employee who lacks knowledge of current technology and practices? Um, I think outcomes based. That's a really tough thing to do, right? If someone has only worked in one system for the last 30, 40 years, if they're only used to working on paper and pencil, it's hard to sort of show them the vision for how technology can change their lives, because the number one fear is, am I going to get replaced? The number one fear is technology going to take my job, and what am I going to do? So we've run into situations where uh, well-meaning folks like these don't give us all of the information. um, they withhold information, they obfuscate stuff, but not in a malicious way. They're just afraid. So how do we guide these employees or staff members on the client side? Number one, you need a clear mandate from the top levels of the organization saying this is a project that everyone's invested in. Council, commission, city management, mayor's office, all the directors, everyone is behind this project, and we're going to push this through. Two, you make sure that that doesn't become just an executive level push, that your client management is translating that into meaningful sort of action steps for people that will actually be using these newer systems. And then our job as consultants becomes showing them what a new system might do, what modern systems are capable of doing, how that doesn't mean that you're going to lose your job, because that's never the number one, especially in our clientele. Governments don't lay people off. Very rarely that does that happen. So the point is always to make these processes more efficient, to find other uses for great talent that are currently bogged down by the lack of technology or um, what have you. So showing them what new tech can do, tying it to outcomes and tying it to um, sort of human tendencies to build legacies or leave the place that you come to work at better than when you found it. If you're an older generation that's about to retire, we treat that as this is your chance to build a legacy, leave a legacy behind of how you improved things for the place that you worked at. If you're brand new into the workforce, this is your chance to set things up the way you want it to. So lots of different ways to bring people forward, because at the end of the day, these are not technology projects. They are. The end result is a system that helps you do things better, but they're largely people projects. They're largely change management projects, and if you don't treat people well, these projects don't go well. So, um, and of course, then there are the people that want they there's nothing else works than dragging them into the future. So all of the above techniques can be used. Lexi asks, education on tech transformations is so important, and elected leaders who get it should do a better job of helping the public understand the investments they're making. A lot of the public would support this money being spent if they could understand how it makes lives easier. That was her statement. Great statement, Lex. But then she asks, how does employing organizational change management practices tie into this? It's huge. I mean, there's whole areas of practice that are built around OCM, organizational change management. You need to constantly tell people what's going on, how it's important to them, and how they are part of something larger than themselves. Because change is scary. Change is it's uncomfortable, and again, doing something different than you've always been accustomed to is is extremely nerve-wracking. So organizational change management has several different techniques to communicate well, communicate often, communicate in different ways, give people access to the information without them having to ask it particularly, is very important. So lots of great work. I encourage you to go look at ProSci. One of our directors, Andrew Hayes, is an expert. He is certified in the ProSci methodology for change management, and we employ that quite often on large or small scale ERP implementations. Clay Brooks says, "What advice do you have for somebody who wants to make a career pivot and get into consulting?" Ooh, what advice do I have for people that want to do consulting? Learn about it first. I mean, this is not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. You know, clients hire consultants to solve really difficult problems, and not just technology. They're management problems, they are organizational problems, they're business process problems. And it's not that they can't solve them themselves. They have day jobs. Two, they may have tried several different things, they may have run into political issues, so they've probably tried everything before they bring a consultant in. And as a consultant, your job is to not be an expert at one thing. You're a generalist. You may be doing an ERP project, but there's so many aspects of management theory and organizational design and business process that go into ERP consulting. For example, if you're doing IT consulting or IT strategic planning, there's several different ways that your training in accounting or finance or HR come into play when you're doing an IT strategic plan. Because at the level at which we do IT strategic plans, it's not necessarily the nuts and bolts of technology. We're looking at your organization as a whole. We're looking at where you want to go. We're looking at your practices, your current technologies, and what's going to take you to that next level that you think you should be at, that you're aiming at. So consulting is not just for technology majors. It's not just for finance majors. It's not just for HR majors. Technology, the best consulting, and if I said technology, apologize, I meant consulting. The best consultants are those that are generalists, that are curious about things, that then become experts at maybe one or two different work streams within consulting. But to start off, uh, some of the best consultants I've ever met or worked with have had varied backgrounds. They've been um, design majors, they've been organizational design majors, they've been music majors, they've gone to pre-med and then decided to do consulting. So curiosity, um, a thick skin which develops over time, because we're constantly put into situations where um, it's fraught with risk and failure. So you have to get up and brush yourself off and move on and take on the next challenge. So what advice do I have for somebody to get into consulting? Do it. It's very rewarding. I've only done consulting for the last 20 years. It's extremely rewarding. And if you're the kind of person that is interested in everything at the same time and not afraid to fail, you definitely need to do it. And if you're bored easily, consulting might be for you. So give us a call. We're always looking for people like that. Great questions from the audience. I'm going to move on to the next one from our prospect that we got asked. So they're asking us, what different approaches will we take to make their project successful? And the project is it's a mid-sized county, and they want to replace their current ERP system. So what approach will we take to make this project successful? And then what accountability measures can be taken to make this project successful in terms of schedule, budget, staff, resource allocation? What can you and the county do to ensure a successful project from evaluation to implementation? I'll take the last part of this first. I think the first piece is having a common vision, right? What can we do to ensure that this is successful? This is the county's project. This is your project. And we're we're putting our necks on the line as consultants, because when things go wrong, obviously we should be blamed first. It's our fault. But if we don't start the project with a common intent, with a feeling of teamwork and understanding exactly who's doing what, we're starting off on the wrong foot. So that's number one. We have to communicate together, set parameters, set communications plans, know what the budgets are, know what who's in charge of what part of the project. And that falls on the project manager and the program manager office, right? That's something that we do for our clients. And the different approaches to make projects successful, really they're different flavors of the same approach, right? It comes down to communication, effective project management, change management, making sure that there are no surprises. uh, we don't like surprises. Our clients for sure don't. So our goal is to make sure that everyone is communicated to at all times, in multiple formats, because we've had issues or run into situations where email newsletters and status reports weren't being read because there were too many, and we like to over communicate, which is a big part of our job, because we don't want there to be any sliver of doubt on anything that's going on. So that there are different approaches, and it all boils down to effective project management, effective communications, and effective stakeholder management, and expectation management. There's a lot of jargon that gets spoken about, and keywords and big words thrown out during projects like these. So you need to make sure that ERP means the same thing to you that it means to the client. You need to make sure that um, business process map means the same thing to you as it does to the finance department. So making sure that you're cognizant of what you're saying, what the meaning is, and are people on the same page is extremely important. And then everything kind of falls around it. Aaron, welcome to the show. Aaron says, what are some key indicators that a state or local agency is a candidate for an ERP renovation? Great question. Um, the obvious one is when was the last time you implemented an ERP system? Uh, if it's 20 years ago, and if it's on premise, and it's a product that is out of support from the vendors that they bought it from, that's obvious. They need to move on it pretty quickly, right? The non-obvious ones tend to be where the system itself is it's not that old. It's been migrated to the cloud. They are on a SaaS platform, but it doesn't work for them, right? When you ask questions like how efficient are your processes, and they're telling you they're still doing purchase orders on paper and pencil, they're still printing out reports, and they're still running into issues where there's overspending money that wasn't in the budget. They're running into issues where people don't have the right kind of credentials or approval thresholds. Then the line of questioning then becomes, it sounds like it's not set up right. um, Maybe you need a re-implementation, right? If it's a product you implemented within the last 5 years and it doesn't work for you, you're still using the old system, you're still running parallel, you have a plethora of Excel sheets around that do the actual work, and then you stick the final results into your ERP system. There is no workflow, and that's another indicator that they might be a candidate. But this only happens through dialogue and conversation. When the RFP comes out that we respond to, yeah, obviously they're looking for an ERP solution, but a a lot of times clients don't think they're a candidate for an ERP replacement, that they've sunk too much money into this system that they have to make it work. And that's a fallacy, right? There's several different ways of avoiding that situation. And it starts with a good implementation, a good selection process. If you just bought something without doing your requirements analysis, if you implemented it with no help, without buying the extra help from either the software vendor or from a consulting firm like us, and you just stuck it in there and it doesn't work for you, uh, that's troublesome, right? And now you're stuck for a little bit because you've just paid all of the SaaS fees, you've paid the implementation fees, and it still doesn't work. Then you might need to do a re-implementation. Uh, but given that we work with state and local agencies, I would say that almost all state and local agencies need to be asked these questions, and so that we can help them. Thanks, Aaron. Next question is, how do we do ERP projects? How do we facilitate on-site and virtual consultation during the first phase, which is the evaluation of processes and practices? And then second part of that is, how will stakeholder feedback influence your procedures and recommendations? We prefer being on site. We love being on site. And I'm glad that we've kind of, you know, opened up since the COVID era. And people are traveling and going to um, client sites, and we're doing the same. We don't like to leave you alone with the vendor, because it's our job to protect your interest as a client that is trusting us to tell you what is what. And it's fair, because it's your day job. I'm sorry, your day job is not ERP consulting, right? It's our day job. So it's our job to tell you um, how this goes and what happens next and what are the pitfalls and risks on taking this project on. So we like being on site. Now, we'll do that when we do discovery sessions. We'll be on site for process mapping sessions. We'll be on site when there are vendor demos. That will be on site for key configuration meetings, and when the vendor sends the teams on site to actually do the work and build your system, we'll be there. And how do we get stakeholder feedback? Uh, how does stakeholder feedback influence your procedures and recommendations? I'd say we take it into it informs a lot of our practice, really, right? Because you know your business best. You know the organization. You've been there as a city or county employee. So we lean on your intel and your um, institutional knowledge and tribal knowledge to sort of uh, tell us how we should do this, and or at least advise us on what things should change as far as our standard practice goes. Because in a project like an ERP replacement, a lot of times it's the people, it's the politics, it's the stories behind, and like I said, the tribal knowledge of why certain decisions were made that are key to understanding how things are going to change in the future. You can't go in there and say, we're going to do a to-be process map for you and rip apart everything that people have worked for really hard over 20, 30 years. It takes some nuance to do that. So stakeholder feedback is really important, and it's one of our superpowers. Is we're really good at making people feel at ease, not threatened, and uh, really taking their lead on things like that, culture of the organization. So that feedback's really critical. Megan's question is, best of breed versus all-encompassing solutions. Thoughts? It depends. It really depends on what your current setup is, what your functions are, how specialized some of your functions and departments are. For example, are you a Tennessee Valley Authority uh, power reseller as a city? Do you supply power that you buy and wholesale from TVA? There's a whole other reporting element in layer two, making decisions like that. And we've helped clients specifically in that area pick best of breed solutions. If you're a smaller agency, um, all-encompassing ERP might be better for you. If you're a larger agency with specialized departments, functions, processes, you may want to look at best of breed. But the point is, when you it all ties down to business process analysis and requirements definition. What are your requirements telling you you need? Put it out there in an RFP and see what the vendor community offers you. And when you release an RFP, make sure it says, we'll accept both, right? We'll accept an all-encompassing product or suite that you have, Mr. Vendor, that only one product does it all, or we'll accept best of breed, singular, very specialized products that can also integrate with other products. Um, so best of breed versus all-encompassing. It really depends on who you are and uh, what your situation is right now. Katie asks, how does a Vero bring value to ERP projects in representing the client as a program manager or organizing a full PMO? Great question. This is one of our core offerings. ERP projects in general, right? We help clients untangle the Christmas lights. If you are running a system that has been cobbled together over 30 years ago, it's so intertwined with your business practices that you don't know where to start. It's like a ball of yarn. Are you going to pull on something that's going to make things worse? So you can't just yank things out, throw them away as much as you'd like to, and implement a new system right away. It takes time, it takes careful effort, um, and it takes some deliberate steps. So that's where we come in. We help you identify where you need to start, what the sequence of events should be, what the risks are, what might break, where you might run into some issues, how much this thing might cost, and we'll stick with you through the end of the implementation. And in the implementation phase, we help you set up the project management office, because again, the clients we work with, you are CFOs, you are HR directors, you are mayors and city managers, you have a portfolio of things you're responsible for, and ERP implementation is another full-time job. Make no jokes about it. This takes full-time attention and work to see through to the other end. So we've had clients that have hired temp workers to do certain pieces of the project, or we've had clients that have hired temp workers to backfill on the actual, day-to-day work of the organization. Like, for example, we had one client that hired some temps to staff the accounts payables department, while the accounts payables clerks and officers became part of the project team, so they could really shape how this project, how the AP function should be configured in the new system. Um, on our part, we staff the PMO. We become the overall leaders of the project, where you have vendors. We're overseeing vendors. We're overseeing suppliers. We're overseeing everything that goes on with the project, especially the timeline, budgets, invoices that come in from the vendors, things like that. Almost like a general contractor um, for a building project. It's almost the same. Next question is, what are some important factors a government agency should consider when selecting an ERP consultant? I think experience is one, but I think it's often misrepresented, meaning it's misunderstood. Um, Experience does not mean number of years. Experience does not mean how long this company has been in existence. Experience means how recently have you done a difficult project and what was the outcome? And how often have you done that in the last 3 years? I think it's critical, because if you look at a software provider or a consulting firm that has been around for 50 years, things are a lot different then, right? All you have is a legacy, and all you have is a stack of uh, client names that you've done work with. How does that equate to quality? But when you're selecting an ERP consultant, if I was a mayor or a CFO, I would look for the company that is nimble, that can move as quickly as we want them to move, that is not bogged down by bureaucracy because they're too large. And I would look for innovation. And innovation comes out of things that are newish, right? Um, why was Kodak not able to captivate the digital camera market? Right? It's a question you need to ask yourself. What happened to Blockbuster? Why aren't they the Netflix? So longevity doesn't always mean better, right? That's one thing. Second, the people, right? Again, you don't really want people that have done this for a long, long, long time, because you're coming in with baggage of how things happened 20 years ago. It's a new world. This is SaaS, cloud era, AI is coming in, and companies like Avero are at the forefront of thinking through things like that. We're not tied to deliverables and templates from 20 years ago, because we are constantly evolving, constantly changing things internally and for our clients. And that's the other thing I would look for. So to summarize, are you nimble? Are you innovative? And can you move as fast as we want you to? And are you going to make us fill out 100 forms to get some minor changes done, or um, answer a question? So uh, those are the things I would look for. Okay, Jake Holland asks, and piggyback off of Megan's question, how can you ensure functioning integrations between all systems defined in the RFP, if you're considering multiple solutions for each type of system? How can you ensure functioning integrations? Yeah, this is something, uh, Jake, you nailed it. I mean, it's a very important question. You need to define the integration points in your requirements, because any modern system should be able to provide APIs. I know I'm simplifying this completely, but uh, APIs today make anything talk to anything. And if I'm wrong, vendor friends, put it in the chat box here. If you're a vendor with a product that is worth its while, you've got APIs that will allow, if not real-time interaction between two systems, definitely at the data layer, you can for sure integrate multiple solutions. And we've seen it, right? We use several um, we've used several different ERP systems that do this today, and they're not the small. I mean, small or large, you should be able to integrate with anything. So that's why best of breed is sort of becoming more popular, because you're not relegated to silos now, right? We have a client that is implementing Workday with 6 other systems that are very specialized, and they all will integrate because that is part of our requirements. It's part of the contract, and they'll all integrate with Workday. So um, it's not a pie in the sky thing anymore, and nor do you need to build specific integrations between systems. Again, if you pick the right vendors, if they're good, they'll have APIs that allow you to do that. How does Avero work against the more established companies, the narrative that more established equates to better? Um, our job is to keep getting better at what we do, and we've been around for almost a decade, and we we go up against the best and we beat them. Not as often as we would like, but it will get there, right? And the more established companies, like I said, all they have is a larger, more established, quote unquote, more established older brand, that doesn't scare me, because that's all they have. We know we do better work. So the clients that have chosen us over more established brands will attest to that. The clients that have fired the more established firms to then hire us in their place will attest to that. So it's a matter of time that we become more established, and then our challenge will be to not become mundane and run of the mill like the more established firms. All right. Next question that came in. Um, the county, like most counties in this state, are uniquely structured with separation of powers and duties, including an elected board of supervisors, 5 constitutional officers, circuit court, commissioner of revenue, commonwealth attorney, sheriff, treasurer, and other local state agencies that interface with the state. How What experience do we have in overseeing an ERP project, given the constraints of public work in counties like this? This is all we do. Very experienced. I mean, we've dealt with several counties that have had large legislative bodies, um, and elected offices, and with that comes politics, right? An ERP implementation that touches every department within the county. Um, that includes the school system, sheriff's office, some very powerful bodies need to be taken into confidence, because if this is something that's coming from the mayor's office and the mayor and the sheriff don't get along, project's not going to go far. If the school system hates the guts of the central finance office, this isn't going to go far. So we need to uh, read the room really carefully. One, we have to work towards making sure that no matter what the political differences, that all the powers that be are aligned behind this one thing. So finding out what's important to each agency, finding out what's important to each elected official, to each large body, political or not, is really important. It's part of the consultant's job to find out, to smooth things over, to make sure people are on the same page, and that at least for this one thing, they're pulling in the right direction, in the same direction. So we've done work with several counties successfully that have had constitutional elected offices that interface with the state on several different things, and we've took them live on ERP implementations. Um, and it all comes down to how well we work with people and how much time we spend on um, understanding the client and understanding what makes people tick. So again, a large part of what we do and large part of ERP implementations is people management, strategic planning, project management, and then there's technology that's also there. All right. Next question is, how will you ensure delivery of project activities, key milestones on time and within budget? Listen, this is one thing we take very seriously. I mean, if we have one main value, it's no surprises, right? So that leads you to believe that we do a really good job of planning, we do a really good job of project management, of budget management, of communications, and therefore we don't miss deadlines. Um, Period. So when we deliver value to our clients, it's always on time, it's always on budget, unless there's something that is out of left field, we didn't anticipate it, client didn't disclose a certain piece of scope, it wasn't included at contracting but it's included now. Things come up that we pivot for, but it's never a surprise for the main scope. So we ensure project activities are delivered on time within budget because it's within our interest to do that, right? We're consultants. We don't want to come live in your organization forever. We want to get the job done and be gone on to the next thing. So our metrics internally are very reliant on project delivery at the highest quality within budget, on time, at the highest levels of satisfaction to the client. And that's how we deliver on our project. Give us an example of how you might benchmark the county's processes and opportunities for improvement against other recognized public sector governments and best practices, as well as ensure that solutions recommended complement those best practices as the county's legal and regulatory requirements. This is a great question. Um, I mean, there's best practices that are best to me and best practices that might not be best practices to your county. So again, I'm going to use the term it depends. You can't just take blanket best practices that were published in some magazine or a website and say, let's apply these to your county. So it all comes down to distilling what's right for you as a county or a city or an organization. Which of these best practices are applicable to you? Which of these other governments that might be forward thinking, ahead of its time in certain areas, might be comparable to you? And county governments, especially in rural areas or semi-rural, they're unique animals. You can't just apply blanket best practices to every county. But the good point is that we show up prepared to share those best practices with you. We have internal knowledge banks, we have internal stories and our own tribal knowledge that we can bring to the table that tell you what these benchmarks are and what might be useful to you. So really defining what benchmarking means to you, what best practices means to you, is important before you go down this path of looking at what's out there and what's good for you. uh, the key element is understanding business processes for yourself, envisioning what you need to do for yourself, for your agency in the next 3 to 5 years, and then going out and looking at what in that direction, what might the best practices be, because otherwise the universe of best practices is too big. um, the universe of people coming up with best practices is too big. And with technology changing as rapidly as it is, with the advent of AI, what is a best practice? So all of this needs to be taken with a real grain of salt, and that's why the profession of consulting exists. It's our job to stay up up to date with best practices. It's our job to stay up to date with who the leading government agencies are that are of a comparable size. What are they doing that might be applicable to you, so that we can bring that knowledge to you on day one. Um, and that's how we are useful in one of the many different ways. Tell us about your change management process. How do you address staff discomfort to change? What role will you play, and what role will the county play? So we talked briefly about change management earlier. I think defining these roles is critical upfront. Um, there's three different roles, right? One is the project sponsor, which is the county's, you might call it the selection panel, the steering committee. The project sponsorship is the group that makes decisions on behalf of the county when you're trying to change things, not just the system. Micro decisions. How are you going to change the thresholds of purchasing? Do you need to change how you track commodity codes within your purchasing system? Do you need to change your chart of accounts or an element of your chart of accounts? These are decisions that can't just be made by a consultant or by the software vendor. We need inputs from the client side, and that's the sponsorship body. When there's an inevitable disagreement, a fight, where two department heads are butting heads about how do you do a certain process, there needs to be a tiebreaker. That's the sponsor. That's the one person that can break that tie and make that decision. So that's the sponsorship role. Second is the project management team. That's us. What do? We ensure that everything is working like clockwork, that the vendor's doing what they're supposed to do, that they're delivering to you what we've bought from them, that they're not charging you and sending invoices for things that have not been delivered or delivered wrong, and generally making sure that your best interest is taken care of. Now, that's a very simplified um, definition of program management, and it can expand, right? We can also supply temporary resources. We can supply business analysts and subject matter experts that help you through this very critical process. So those are the roles. And we talked about change management and how do you get people to move forward. Again, it number one is treating people like people. You can have all of the acronyms for OCM, ProSci, ADCAR, what have you, and you can send out emails and communications all day. But if you're not treating people as people, if you're not understanding that what you're talking about is their lives and talking about changing their lives, you're not a good consultant. And that's how we go about this: real deep care for the people that are on the other end of your best practices and your PMP and OCM jargon. With what ERP solutions do you have experience? Given that one solution may not be the best solution, how have you managed projects that have incorporated multiple solutions? Have you taken a phased implementation approach by department or area? How are you able to ensure that you do not have a preference for a vendor? I'm going to take the last one first. We do not and will never have a preference for a vendor. We are an agnostic, independent third-party company that um, we don't take sides, because that's the role that we're in. We want to be the client's trusted advisor, because as a CFO or a CHRO or a CIO, you're getting 10 emails a day or more saying their product, the software product that's pitching to you, is the best thing since sliced bread. How do you know what's best for you? So if we go at it from a biased perspective, we lose credibility. So our job is to remain independent. Our job is to remain unbiased and agnostic when we try to find you the best fit. That doesn't mean that we don't know what's going on in the market. We know a lot, because it's in our best interest to, one, stay on top of things on what products are being offered, what functionalities are being offered. So we sit on a bunch of advisory boards, again, from a client's perspective, because we work with clients so closely. We're able to tell our software vendor friends what the clientele is looking for, what they want, and it's in their best interest to come to us to give us demos of their best best new features, best new products, and there's a continuous dialogue that goes on, again, while being completely independent. So yeah, we'll never have a preference for any vendor. It really depends on what's the best fit for you. um, we talked about best of breed solutions and interfaces, and let's talk about the next piece of this question. What's a phased implementation approach by department or area? It We've done it several different ways. If you want to implement finance first, HRIS payroll later, we've done that. If you want to implement finance, HR, payroll at the same time, we've done that. Typically, what happens is at the beginning of the project, depending on which vendor you've chosen, you will um, determine what the sequence is. Like the vendor will show up and say, okay, this should go first, then this, then this. But is it right for you? So then our job becomes creating that real work plan on what product suites are going to go live when, and that happens working with the client and the vendor. So the sequencing and the phasing of this really depends um, on your unique situation. What do you believe is the single most important area for the services you provide that makes your ERP projects most successful? What is your value proposition, and why should we select you? That was a great question. I think one of the biggest reasons is we're smaller than our competition by design. We carefully choose the clients we want to work with, um, and the clients that want to work with us don't want to be one of 1,000 um, clients for the firm they're working with. They don't want to be on the back burner. They want a firm that is nimble and innovative and will take them to the finish line quickly, without getting bogged down in bureaucracy and paperwork. So that's one of our biggest value propositions. Um, and then the more value-based value proposition is really that our people at Avero are not just ERP experts. We take great pride in taking care of our clients. That is our number one value: deep care for our clients. And that just doesn't mean the project. We care about the people that work at uh, at these clients. Um, and that helps in several different ways. Building rapport is extremely important in a project like an ERP replacement. Um, Building trust is extremely important. So we differentiate ourselves by being uh, real value based people that really care about not just the work that we do, but the people that we work for. And that has um, paid off in spades. Like it's every project has been successful, not only from an ERP sort of deliverable perspective, but from a making people's lives better perspective. That's our core philosophy, and we'll stand by, and that really is what makes us different. Okay, last question. We only know what we know. Most of us around this table have not been through a technology project of this magnitude. What questions have we not asked you that you were expecting? Or what do you believe is paramount to understand during our deliberations? That question stumped me at the time, and it's stumping me now. Um, I think these people, this client, they became a client. We won this job. Um, they did a great job of due diligence. They were very interested in what we had to say. It wasn't a checkbox sort of presentation. It was very tightly run. It was within purchasing regulations, and um, it was a great dialogue. They brought a cross section of people to do the selection. There was the CFO, CHRO, CIO, a couple of representatives from the board of supervisors, which is their legislature, someone from the school, someone from sheriff, a good cross section, so we could really get into a dialogue and answer any questions from any angle. Um, so they did a great job. I think it was one of the best interviews I've done as a team. And so the opposite of that tends to be where you are not allowed to ask questions yourself or have dialogue, you're taking canned questions and you're going through the motions as if the selection's already been done. You've made up your mind about who you want to go with, and here we are, jumping on 2 flights at 3 in the morning to get to you to show you our presence. Um, but anyway, questions that were not asked, I don't think they left anything on the table. Um, all the important questions were asked, and again, that they became a client. It's our latest client actually. We're about to sign off uh, on that contract. But I don't see any other questions that have come in or that I missed. Let me double check. And I think that is it. If you have any other questions, I am available on all of our social channels and by email or website. Just reach out on LinkedIn. We're here to serve you. We're here for dialogue. We're here for a good debate. And come find us at averoadvisors.com. And again, all of our social channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, what have you, we're out there. I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.